It's obligatory for policemen, for new policemen, to know about the anti-Semitism. And two professors, I've been actually a week ago, I've been in Serbia, and within, thanks to the Holocaust Memorial in Paris, I'm traveling a lot to explain the phenomenon, the complex phenomenon of anti-Semitism. And I'm Belgian, and you know Belgium is the country of the comic strip, so I use a lot of image, and I'm quite a specialist on iconology. And also what I try, because it's so complex and so awful, anti-Semitism, that I try also to, to use humor to destroy the stereotypes. It's even better.
Allô? Vous m'entendez? Okay, now it's working. So I try to explain a complex phenomenon as simple as possible, but of course not simplify the concept. So the first thing I will explain to my students or to policemen or whatsoever is the fact that there are no inevitability, no
historical inevitability to hatred of Jews, because very usually, very often people will say, but hey guys, when you will find Jews, you will find anti-Semitism. The problem is that people doesn't like Jews, so this should be a kind of responsibility of the Jews. And what is important to stress is you have a lot of moments in history and places in history where you won't find any traces or real traces of what I call, and I will have to explain to you what I call my definition of anti-Semitism. And when you take China, India, or even the Roman Republic, and even the Roman Empire, despite the fact that there was war between the Roman Empire and Judea, and you know it's going to be the destruction of the temple, you can't say there were anti-Semitism and such. But according to me, what is anti-Semitism? Anti-Semitism is something totally irrational. It's, I call it a psychosis. It's just the question to blame the Jews, to consider that the Jews are responsible of the misfortune of the world. This is my definition of anti-Semitism. It's not the fact that you dislike the Jews or Judaism, that you despise them. Because if you remember the Roman Empire, in a sense they despised Judaism. Why? Because they considered the Jews lazy. Why lazy? Because the Jews invented the weekend. And for the Roman it was quite strange. They also despised Jews because, you know, they didn't kill the children if they were handicapped. You know, the Jews, they don't do this. The Romans did it. But in another sense, they envied the Jews. And finally, you know, the Roman Empire will convert to Judaism, but to a heretic form of Judaism, which is going to be Christianity. So it was a kind of fascination of the Roman, etc. And you can't say that there was anti-Semitism, as I define it, within the Roman Empire. You could be Jew and be a senator, for instance. So, no, there is no responsibility of the Jews, and this is important, I think, to stress. The other thing that I think it seems to be important to tell the students is there is no refusal to integration. Very often, non-Jews will say, well, the Jews, they don't want to integrate. They want, not question of assimilation, but even to integrate. They want to be a part. But when you see this, you will see that this is not the real thing, because there you will see that the Jews, they look like the people they live with. For instance, you will see there Hellenistic Jews, you will see Indian Jews, Ethiopian Jews, Moroccan Jews. You can't decide if there is a Jew or a Muslim. He is a Jew, definitely. A Jew from Istanbul, Jew from China, and a German Jew. And how can you see that this man is a Jew? Only thanks to this, the yellow badge. This is the only way. And this shows, if you have to point a Jew by, you know, giving him a kind of, I don't know, sign or badge, it means that he looks like you. This is the problem of Jews, not the problem of the non-Jew, actually. And this is the origin, of course, of the yellow star created by the Nazis. And the origin is the Arabic world. It's Harun al-Rashid who forced the Jews to wear yellow belt for the Jews and blue belt for the Christians. etc. So this is, and to stress it more, oh, make a mistake, don't ask me what this is. Is there a doctor in the room? Good. Wow, this is like... When you panic, it's terrible. Okay, my glass. Qu'est-ce qu'il me fait là? And this is an example, of course, of how Jews were detained. And you can see that what we call the Jewish type has been created by how to say, designers, if I speak well. Those people create what we call the Jewish type, special nose, etc., special phenotype. And this is a French postcard. So I prefer to use this. This is also typically, Jewish representation. The first one is an Austrian one, and the second one is a Russian one. And you can see they are Jewish. Why? Because this is the representation of non-Jew of Jews, of course. And I will show you these beautiful German soldiers. Why? It's very strange, and I will show you beautiful German soldiers. And this was, he was photographed in front of the Berlin Fallsplatz just after the victory of the German army against the Polish, against Poland. And unfortunately, they discovered that this man actually was half Jew. His name was Werner Goldberg, and he would be expelled from the German army, and he won't participate to the invasion of France in the months after. The same with this one. This is a magazine about German family. They wanted to have a perfect German lady, a baby, and the photographer, who was an anti-fascist, he put a picture of a Jewish girl, just to make fun. And this is, the Jewish girls after, when she was 18. And this means, well, there is no Jewish type. But unfortunately, they created one. So the second thing is, you don't need Jews to be anti-Semite. And this is really the difference between, I will say, xenophobia, racism, and antisemitism. You can have a society with antisemitism with no Jews, or very few Jews. Hitler came to power in 1933 based on an anti-Semitic speech. There were only 1% of Jews in Germany. 1% means almost, not almost. They were quite important, but only 1%. So it means, and this is important, anti-Semitism doesn't tell us about Jews, but society, and always society in crisis, but not only in crisis, I would say also in mutation, profound change, revolution, industrial revolution, whatsoever, and I consider this, not only me, as a social disease. And I will explain to you that it is an neurosis of religious origin, transmuted into social psychosis. And the most important thing that I try to tell my students, Jews are not responsible for the wars of the world, but this is the definition, of course, of anti-Semitism, etc. So the question is, where will you find anti-Semitism, when, and why? And this is what I will try to explain to you, and this is what I try to explain back to my students. So, what is important to stress, that you will only find anti-Semitism, as I define it, only where you have Muslim and even more Christian. Why? And it means around Mediterranean at the origin. Why? Because it's a question of family. It's a family problem. There are no difference between Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. It's the same religion. The difference is to know whether Jesus is the Christ announced by the Torah, or if Muhammad is the last prophet, that the Jews were expected. So it's a family problem. And you can analyze it like, I would say, a problem in opposition to the father. And you know that you have to kill the father if you want to exist, if you want to impose yourself. And so it's a question of competition. The competition is who's going to convert the Christian pagans, the Roman pagans. Whether it's going to be the Jews, or the Christian, or maybe the Mitraillean, the cult of Mitra, who came from Iran, etc. So Judaism is a competing phase, and And the problem is the matrix of both Christianity and Islam. And you know that the family quarrel got worse. The first crime in the Bible is between two brothers, Abel and Cain. The first crime in the Roman history, it's between Romulus and Remus. And you know that, yeah, the fierce opposition within the family is very terrible. So it means logical opposition to the faith, to the father, will inspire the relationship between Judaism and the two religions. And, of course, Christianity and Islam must logically come to oppose the mother religion. So the problem is like this. Both Christianism and Judaism claim the heritage of Judaism. It's the same religion, and it claims the heritage. The problem is, you can only inherit if the people is dead. And the Jews, they don't want to die. They are less and less, but they're not interested in it. So, this is going to cause psychological problem. And the problem number two is that the Gospel and the Quran are essentially based on biblical stories. It means. So, those who refuse to disappear, to control the original and holy myth. You know, if you're a pope, you speak Hebrew, because you have to read the Torah in Hebrew, by definition, etc. An example of this is, for instance, the sacrifice of Abraham. Who did Abraham wanted to sacrifice? Was it Isaac? Well, according to the Bible and to the, you know, the Christian gospel or whatsoever tradition, it's Isaac, his second son. But according to certain hadith, not the Quran, it's Ishmael. And of course the difference is important. If it's Isaac, it means holy people is going to be the Jews. If it's Ishmael, of course, it's going to be the Arabs. Of course, it's mythical. According to me, Abraham never existed. It's a myth. But it's an important myth. And you understand that there is a problem. Because the father of Islam, they knew that the Torah was written at least 10 centuries before the Quran. So it's a problem. And you have to solve it. So, anti-Judaism is a neurosis. This is what I call it. There is a problem of cognitive dissonance. So what's the difference between a psychosis and a neurosis? You know that for a normal person, 1 and 1 means 2. For a psychotic, 1 and 1 could be 4, thousands. It's like psychotic. For a neurotic, 1 and 1, of course it's 2, but this reality is so uncomfortable. He cannot accept the reality. And this is the problem of, you know, of the father of Christianity and the father of Islam. They know that the religion is the same. They know that they cannot understand Christianity and Islam without the Judaism, but they don't want to accept it. It's a reality they wanted to avoid. And this is the origin, I would say, of anti-Semitism. And this is not anti-Semitism yet, it's anti-Judaism. They don't like Judaism. They don't care about the Jews so much. It's the hatred, in a sense, of the Jewish religion. So, and this is a very good sentence of Professor of France, Daniel Sibony, and he said the origin of the hatred is the hatred of the origin. And this is the core of anti-Semitism. And this makes us understand that you will really find real anti-Semitism not in India or in China or in Japan, but where you will find Christian and Muslim. Because the origin of the hatred is the hatred of the origin. I think it's a good way to explain at least anti-Judaism. So the problem was, at the beginning, it was identification, then incomprehension, and then modern jealousy, morbid jealousy, What does it mean? At the origin, the first Christians believed they were Jewish, and they wanted the Jew to be Christian, because they believed it was just, you know, the correct way to be a Jew. The same with Muhammad. At the origin, Muhammad believed that he was a Jew. They prayed toward Jerusalem, they fasted Yom Kippur, and then you realize the Jew didn't want to convert, didn't recognize him. The same with Luther. At the origin, Luther was pro-Jewish, and then he became, when he understood the Jew didn't want to convert, he became crazy about the Jews. So, the 3 steps in the sense of anti-Judaism, not anti-Semitism, is, and then it's morbid jealousy. You cannot cope with those people. They don't see that Judaism is the real Judaism, etc. Yet, and this is the difference between anti-Judaism and anti-Semitism, while being despised and attacked, the Jewish people, for wearing a time the word of God, remain largely sacred, if not envied. Jealousy, this is very important too to understand. Beside the hatred, Judaism cannot be treated as any pagan religion and belief. You know that all the philosophical schools were closed in the 6th century. You know that you couldn't be in Egypt worshipper of gods, etc. So the only way of not being a Christian was to be a Jew. So for the Christian and then the Muslim, Judaism is an offense, however, not liable to death, contrary to the heretic. So this means that the Jew, they were the only minority within the Christian. Again, it's an anti-French microphone. I can understand your microphone. Thanks.
So, the first solution is how to cope with those people who doesn't want to be Muslim or Jew. The first one, servitude and humiliation. Jews is a necessary evil, an error in the service of truth. And this is St. Augustine, wrote that the Jews should be not killed, but condemned to dispersion and humiliation as a sign of the church victory over the synagogue. It's a kind of condemnation to eternal servitude that will be maintained for centuries. It means that it's going to be like, as long as we have to convert the pagans, by putting them, the Jews, in servitude, it's a way to say the cost of not being a Christian, in a sense, also. And it's going to be connected to a myth that it's the wandering Jews. The fact that the Jews are cursed and they won't be able to go back to Israel, for instance. And if I ask you, who was the last state of Europe to recognize the state of Israel, do you think? What?
Vatican.
The Vatican. And this is why. Because if you recognize Israel, it means that maybe St. Augustine was wrong. There was no curse on the Jewish people, etc. This is a very famous, one of the very famous image of the wandering Jews. It was a film, 1926. So, solution 2 is criminalization. It was an easy way to criminalize the Jews, and the Jew says, well, they tried to kill the Christ, and I will go back to this. And for the Muslim, in a sense, it's certain tradition, that Muhammad was poisoned by his last wife. And this is a way to criminalize the Jews. The solution 3, and this is important, is the Christian will invent what is called theology of substitution. Okay, there was a link between the Jews and God, but now it's caduc, it's finished, it's ended. The new Jewish people is the church, the new Jerusalem is Rome or Constantinople or Moscow, the new sacred language is no more Hebrew, is Greek or Latin or Russian, etc. And this is the way. Substitution. We, the Christian, we substitute the Jews. And this is a way, to go beyond the neurosis. You deny. And even you forget that Jesus was a Jew. This is a good example of theology of substitution. This is in Strasbourg Cathedral. It's called the Victory of the Church over the Synagogue, and you can see how the synagogue looks like. It's a beautiful lady, even more, I think more sexy than the Christian lady, I would say, but she's blind. She's in error. She didn't recognize that Jesus was the Messiah announced by the Torah. The spear is broken. It means the alliance is caduc, it's finished. And then the Torah is still there. It will be called the Old Testament, but still is there. But it's an appendix to the real gospel. And this is typical, and you will find hundreds of representations like this in many churches and cathedrals all over Europe. People couldn't read, and it was a way to understand.
Another example is this beautiful painting that you will find in Madrid, in Le Prado, by the Flemish painter Van Eyck. It's called The Victory of Christianity over the Judaism. And then you will see what? Well, you can't see very well. But anyway, this is a detail, you know, it's of the painting. And you can see the Jews, actually they look like Flemish people. They dress like Flemish people. But you can see they are Jews because of their special hats. But you see, they don't want to listen to the good news, etc. They are in the error. And what is important to show this also, and this is anti-Judaism. This is not anti-Semitism. In anti-Judaism, there is a salvation way for the Jews. It's conversion. They still are human beings. What you don't like in the human being is that he is a Jew. But you can leave your Judaism when becoming a Christian. In anti-Semitism, what you don't like in the Jew is that the fact is a human being, so you have to kill the Jews. This is the difference between anti-Semitism and anti-Judaism, etc. So, third solution, this was the Muslim response to the same neurotic problem, the dissonance cognitive, and it's going to be theology of falsification. Contrary to the Christian, you do not consider that there was an alliance between Jewish people and God. You believe that the Torah and the Gospel has been falsified, that the real Torah, the real Gospel, they announced already Muhammad, and that the Quran was even written before the Torah, and that all the the prophet, they were already Muslim. That Abraham was a Muslim, etc., and even Isa, Jesus, and Jesus being a kind of precursor, the last prophet before the last messenger, who is Muhammad, etc. And this is an example of the fact that some doctors, not all of them, of Muslim faith, believe that it was in fact not Isaac but Ishmael who was almost killed by his father. The first consequence is, and this is important also, because the Jews will have a special status without Islam and Christianity, the Jews are totem and taboo. They're not only taboo, they are also totem. It's the first, people who had a special relationship with God. But they are envied, how would you pronounce this? Envied, thanks. Despised and humiliated, but still sacred and useful. Why useful? And this is also important. Ernest Gellner, the famous sociologist actually who teach here, he invented the castration, and Jews were a castrated, class or caste. They were useful to the medieval or the feudal, society as middleman minority, because, in traditional society, you need people like the Jews or like priests who couldn't have children, or like, minorities whatsoever. Sometimes it's going to be the Chinese or Indian. You need those kind of minorities. And the Jews were very useful to avoid any kind of, I would say, revolution within your own people. So the Jews were tertiary sector embryo. In the High Middle Age, Jews were tolerated because they were useful. Living as they did at the margin of society, Jews performed economic functions that were vital to the pre-modern feudal society. And this explains why you cannot really find traces of what I will call anti-Semitism according to my definition, or even pogroms or massacre before the Crusades. They were useful to the feudal society. Everything will change around 1100. Consequence 2. Hence, the Jews are going to constitute the only minority tolerated within Christian and Muslim state, especially the Maghreb, and to become gradually the usual suspect and ideal scapegoat. Any society needs to find within itself the reason of the what went wrong, and of course it's going to be the only minority, and it's going to be the Jews. Conclusion. It is exactly in this double context, theological, totem and taboo, and sociological, only tolerated minority, that the Jews are gradually being assigned a triple role: religious, the Jews at witness and curse, economic, the Jews as foreign and economical agent, and finally, the Jews as an outlet to internal crisis, the scapegoat. It's logical. And so, on this religious hostility, set up gradually as a cultural call, will arise at first traditional anti-Judaism, then modern anti-Semitism, then, by a tortuous one and complex progress, the Nazi anti-Semitism, and finally, by a curious return of the history, current new Judeophobia called radical anti-Zionism. And I will try to speak about it. What is important is you shouldn't confuse between anti-Judaism and anti-Semitism. What is anti-Judaism? It's a rational opposition. You dislike the Jews for what they are, Jews, for what they believe. They do not believe that Jesus is the Messiah. You don't like them because they rest their weekends on Shabbos and not on Friday or Sunday. And this shows that the pivotal status of the Judaism, if you consider, and in a sense it's normal. You know that monotheist religions are intolerant by definition. The worst war is between also brothers and sisters, between Shiites and Sunnites, between Protestant and Catholic, between Jews and Samaritans. Jesus, who only met Jews, he found a good Samaritan. It means a lot. A good Samaritan. Because according to the Jews then, Samaritans were hatred. That's why only 1,000 of them are left also. So the quarrel is theological. You don't like Judaism. And on the whole, logic, if we think about the exclusivism of the monotheist faith. But there is one thing which announced anti-Semitism, and this is the myth of Judah, the one who is supposed to have betrayed Jesus. Because we know that the Romans are responsible of Jesus' death, not the Jews. And I will show you how you can show it, that this is maybe the first fake news of history. And you can see already that, you can't see it very well, unfortunately, but you can see already how Jesus will be more and more, he will look more and more like an Aryan, if it exists, it doesn't, and Judah more and more like a Jew. And of course, it's very useful. Judah means a Jew. So Jew betrayed Jesus. The problem is that all those people there around the Last Supper, they're all Jews. You can't find any non-Jews. But of course, it's so convenient to say that Judah betrayed Jesus. And this is Jean Chrysostome, and he said the Jews did slay Christ, you did lift violent hands against the master, you did spill this precious blood, this is why you have no chance for atonement, excuse, or defense. And this is very useful, this is very clever, because they had to convert the Romans. You couldn't say to the Romans, you kill our gods. So you have to make the Romans innocent, and so you have to say that the Jews are responsible, and it's good, because you want to destroy Judaism, because you are the new, etc. And this is Middle Age representation that you can't see so well. In my computer it's better. And then you see that actually the one, who slain Jesus are not the Roman legionaries. The Jews, you can see on the hats. And this is very interesting. This is the first Jewish conspiracy. Why? Because you see that Jewish people are giving Jesus to, who is this man? Ponce Pilate. And how is Ponce Pilate represented? He's a Jew. Ponce Pilate, the Roman, is a Jew. And what is important, it's a conspiracy. And who is this man? It's Judah. And how could we know it? He sell it for money. So it's a Jewish conspiration for money. And this explains also a lot. Anti-Semitism has cultural, religious roots. This is another example. Everyone knows that he was, slain by Romans, and those actually, they were Jews. And this is a good example, 13th century in England, and this is really, how finally this is a transformation, how look look how Jesus is represented, like a beautiful British citizen, and look the Jews, and look even Ponce Pilate. Ponce Pilate is being a Jew. And you understand the importance of this myth. And this is a fake news. And the problem is, you know, in political science, what's important is not the reality, but what you believe the reality is, the representation of the reality. If you believe this, well, you become an anti-Semite, etc. But still, difference between anti-Semitism and anti-Judaism. So, well, let's go to anti-Semitism. So, contrary to what people believe, of course, the word has been invented in 19th century. Anti-Semitism. Okay, it's a 19th century word, but it doesn't mean you cannot use it for previous, you know, time. The same thing, for instance, with genocide, invented in 1942 by Lemkin, and we speak about the genocide of Armenian, 1915. The same thing, we speak about the assassination of Julius Caesar. The concept of assassination, it's from, you know, the Arabic, it's ashashin. So it means, who cares? According to most of the medieval historians, like Langmuir, Giovanni Miccoli in Italy, anti-Semitism is 13th, 12th century, not 19th century. It depends how you define it. If you define anti-Semitism as the fact that you don't only despise the Jew, you despise them, of course, but you fear the Jews. Anti-Semitism is the fear of the Jews. They are extremely powerful. Why they're powerful? Because they are connected to the evil. So they can destroy you. Even if they are 1%, they can destroy you. And this is a fear. It's a social paranoia. And this is the 13th century, where everything will start it. And you will see what does it mean. There is a difference. The hatred of the Jews born in the wake of the Crusades is still religiously inspired, but distinguishes itself from it by its totally irrational side. The hatred is no more doctrinal, but of a fantastical order. You don't despise the Jews for what they are, but for what they are not. They don't hate, you know, the humankind. They don't kill children. They don't poison the, etc. They don't bring disease, etc. And this is anti-Semitism. From then, anti-Semitism is already essentially a social construction. Neurosis turns into psychosis. Why? And one of the reason is economically. It's the misfortune of the Jews as a middleman minority. They're not useful anymore. In Flanders, in Italy, you have local bourgeoisie who want, or in Spain, who wanted to get the position that were given to the Jews in the feudal society. So we don't need them anymore. And you know, if you don't want your dog, you will say he has the rage, you know, of course. And this is the problem of the Jews. And so it means they were envied, and, well, and so it's going to be the Crusades. The Christians were supposed, you know, to take back the Holy Land to the Muslim, and then some priest says, okay, we have to fight the infidels. Well, so it's okay. We have to fight the infidels, but we have infidels without us, without our society, and they are even worse than the Muslim because they killed the Christ. So the first massacre of the Crusades, as you know, were the Jewish community along the Rhine. 10,000 Jews were killed. And it's a major cultural shift. That's why I insist anti-Semitism is a medieval concept, but late medieval concept. Full-scale persecution, many places, with special accusation. So as I said, the Jews, and it's not Judaism anymore, it's the Jews who are hatred, etc. They are despised, they are hatred for not what they are, but what they are supposed to be, and they are becoming responsible of the misfortune of the world. This is my definition of anti-Semitism, and it's going to be, again, wow, okay. Jews were burned because of, and you will find, and this is really the beginning. You can't find, you know, traces of persecution like this before the Crusaders period and the economical revival. That's why I say crisis, but also mutation. Some example you can find, Jews being, you know, with very strange accusation. You know what this accusation is? That the Jews were supposed to, you know, how to say, to desecrate the Holy Host, etc. Because, you know, and you know they're bleeding because it's the Christ actually. And this is a representation of in Belgium, in the main cathedral of Brussels, where O Kings are crowned. And it was created on the side where Jews were burned in 1370 because they were supposed to have, you know, destroyed. Ok, mais c'est vraiment. This is a, voilà, this is a. So, and the most, you know, the worst accusation of this period will be, you know, blood libel and ritual murder. And the first occurrence actually is in England, in Norwich, 1144. You can't find any example, well, in Alexandria, but it was much earlier, but it means in the Christian era, it's 1144, the first time the Jews were accused of, you know, of having killed a child. And between 1144 till 1946 in Kielce, Poland, you will find around 200, you know, cases of fake accusation against the Jews. And most of the children, you know, supposedly killed by Jews will be, if not beatified, they will be sanctified. And the main one will be, what his name is, of course, it's Simon of Trento. And this is an example of Simon of Trento. And he will be, and this is example, you will find, you know, hundreds. And so it means that the Jews, they are doomed. You know the difference, this is the difference between, if you can see, the difference between anti-Judaism and anti-Semitism. This is not anti-Judaic way of exposing the Jews. This is anti-Semitic. The Jew, they are connected to the devil. Wow, it's so modern. And this is a good example of, you can see the difference between the Strasbourg Cathedral, you know, the two beautiful girls, and anti-Semitism. This is in France, Canaveggio, and you can see the difference. This is, of course, Judah, and look how Judah is the pain. It's like a Sturmer cartoon, etc. And Judah is doomed because he's connected to the devil. He sold his soul to the devil. This is it's a representation of his soul, and this is, you know, the 30 denarius, the money, again. And you can see the difference, and you can see that this is anti-Semitism. You cannot save a Jew. It's finished, you know. He's connected to the devil, etc. And all those saints that I was speaking about, like Simon of Trento, they were sanctified after Vatican II. Because, of course, it's absurd. You know, Jewish, how they eat. They don't, of course, blood, animals, they can't eat, and certain animals, and, you know, believing the fact that they need blood of young children for Passover, for the matzah, it's totally absurd. And the Pope knew it. But there was a social pressure. That's why they were obliged to sanctify all those people. And this is Simon of Trento. And finally, this is an extreme right, you know, extreme right manifesto. And they say, you know, before I was a saint, but that was before Paul VI. And look, and this is very funny too. Réseau pédocriminel, pédo-holocaust. Le crime rituel dans l'histoire. So you understand, ritual crime in history. So it means it's still working, those accusations. So, Jews has become useless and superfluous. The economic resentment allied with traditional religious prejudice prompted the forced expulsion of Jews from several countries and regions. And this is, you know, the fact that the Jews will be expelled from all over Europe. It will start in England, 1290, and it will finish in Portugal. There will be no more Jews in Europe. Well, some part of Spain, some part of Italy, North Italy, of course, Holland, some cities in Germany, then of course the Ottoman Empire, and that's it, and Poland. 80% of the Jewish population then lived in Poland in 1800. 80% of the Jewish population lived in Poland. So some of our students, you heard about Dieudonné, you know, the French antisemite, who said the Jews were responsible of slave trade. Wow, slave trade. Very strange. There were no Jews in England, no more Jews in France, no Jews in Spain and Portugal. How could you be responsible of slave if, the main, countries who actually did slave trade, there were no Jews there. So it's totally absurd, but it works because the important is not the reality. So, minority, and this is important to know, there were no more Jews, and any society needs, scapegoats. So, when the Jews will disappear, the Christian society, they will have to choose another kind of victims, and it's going to be the women. And the phenomenon of witches started when you won't have any Jews to burn in public space. And it's really connected. That's why sometimes I say to my students, women are Jews and they ignore it, and Jews are women and they don't know it too. It's the same. It's the minority who has to explain why what went wrong, because you need it. If you believe that everything is good because God exists, you need the devil. And the devil were connected to the Jews, and now it's going to be connected to the women. And you will see that the peak of the witch hunt, it's after the expulsion of the Jews from Europe between 1450 and 1750. Around 35 to 100 women will be killed. Exactly the same phenomenon that occurs against the Jews. I was in Portugal giving lecture 1 month ago, and they told me we had no problem with witches. Why? Because they have maranos. So they could still burn Jews. But fake Jews, fake Christian as they say. It was very interesting because you need the devil to explain why God doesn't, finally salute everything. And this is a good example, why, they call the Sabbath. And, the origin of the hat. It's the Jewish hat. The women, the witches, they bear the same hat than the Jewish hat. It's the same. And the wicked witch, actually, I've seen in London 2 days ago with my daughter. It was wonderful. And she wore the Jewish hat, actually. So let's go back. And this is about Islam. And the differences between Christianity and Islam, it means contrary to Christianity, we still have anti-Judaism till the 19th century. Within the traditional Muslim society, the Muslims, they didn't fear the Jews. They despised them. Nobody in Islam before 19th century would believe that the Jew, they are responsible of the misfortune of the Islam world. They were in a very bad condition. They were second-class citizens and nothing to compare. So anti-Semitism, as I define it, or as medieval historian will define it, it's 19th century, actually influenced by the priest coming from first Orthodoxy and then Christian thing, like, Damascus affair, etc. And then, of course, the creation of Israel. How could you explain that we couldn't destroy Israel? It's because, Israel is connected to, special forces. And so this is anti-Semitism, and I will speak if I have time later on. But still, the relation was not so easy. And you know that all the Jews, they were expelled from the Arabia Peninsula. And this is, with Khaybar massacre, etc. So, and this is a pogrom, actually, that you had some kind of pogroms. This is in Fez 1911, and those are Jews who were forced to hide themselves in the zoo of the Sultan, the only way to survive the mob, etc. And this, of course. Let's speak about modern anti-Semitism. Let me see how long. How many more minutes?
10 minutes.
Oh my God, it's impossible. Okay. Okay, what is important to say, I will try why anti-Semitism also. And why is this? The unbearable success of the Jews. And you can say the same about anti-feminism, misogyny. The Jews has nothing. like the women. And so suddenly you can find prime minister, women, etc. And so before they were poor, and now look they are. Now they have succeeded. The difference between the women and the Jews, no one will say, of course, the benefactor of modernity were the Jews, like the women, like the homosexuals. But nobody will say homosexuals invent modernity, or the women invent modernity. People will believe that the Jews invented modernity. This is the difference too. And so you despise the Jew, whether they're rich or poor. And they are the ideal scapegoat by which to explain the misfortune of the world. And this very famous motto, Die Juden sind unser Unglück, is because of the Jews that, again, the society doesn't work well. They are traitors. And you can see the influence of the Christian myth. This is, who is this man? Dreyfus. Of course, it doesn't look like this. Of course not. But this is how he was represented. And it's a Masonic conspiracy. And he's a traitor. For what? For money. He's a new Judah. And so you can see that anti-Semitism has, of course, Christian roots. And the Jews are depicted, as the king of the world. This is a Russian postcards. And it's the same. It's also a fake news, but it works. It's the same fake news that the Jews invented slavery. It's the same. The Jews are supposed to be, responsible of the bad condition of the mujik, but there were no Jews allowed in Moscow, St. Petersburg, and Kiev. The central town of Russian Empire, there were no Jews. But people believe it, because people believe in fake news. And this is the result, pogroms. The Jews were killed. And this is the origin of immigration to the United States and the creation of Zionism. The Jews, they wanted to leave Russia. Thank God they leave Russia, thanks to the anti-Semite. Why? Because those who stayed will be killed by the Nazis. So the fact that the myth of Judeo-Bolshevism, that the Jews are responsible of Bolshevism, and this is a very good drawing of Abel Pan, actually was a Russian Jew. He explained, I think it's brilliant. He's explained what anti-Semitism is. Whom to blame? The little Jew, Abel Pan. It's a very good painting, actually. And recognize it was, of course, before the First World War, because you will have the Kaiser, the Emperor, etc. So what is the origin? Modernity equal evil equal Jewish conspiracy. Of course the Jews, they were a benefactor of modernity, like I'd say the women, like the homosexual, like any minorities. And this is a French postcards. In 1904, crosses were taken from tribunals. And for the Christian, it was terrible. No more crosses in tribunals. It means neutrality. It means separation between church and state. And the man who bought the postcards, he wrote, "Abat les Juifs," considering that it was because of the Jews that there is a separation within the church. And were the Jews responsible of this? Of course not. It was during Dreyfus affairs. So the Jews were hiding because they fear pogroms in France. This also is classical. The Jews, and this is the characteristic of anti-Semitism, contrary to racism or xenophobia, the Jews are rich and poor. The capitalists and communists. They are pacifists and warmongers. It means this is the problem of the Jews. And you can see the Masonic sign, of course. And this is really, and if you look today, some website, American or European website, you will see always the Jews, the Masons, domination of the world, etc. And this is a very interesting postcards. It's called De-Christianization of France, and it explained the process of modernization of society. What is the modernization? It means when religion is replaced by science, the traditional world by a modern world. It means being a bourgeois or worker. It means that you have to step on the Christ. It means you have to accept that religion is no more the focus of your society. And the man who drew it He understands the modernization of France. It means the separation between church and state. It's a Jewish conspiracy. A bat is traditionally the Jew, and actually he's a Jew. This man is actually the lawyer of Dreyfus. He's his portrait. So it means the Jews, they are those who are responsible of the end of Christianity within France. And look how the Republic looks like, French Republic. She's Jewish, actually. And of course, the Jews has nothing to do with this. The one responsible of separation of France, of church and state, is this man, Combes, who actually was a Christian and almost become a priest. He was in the seminary. But who cares about reality? Fake news is the most important thing. This is an American thing. And it explained that people make a confusion between modernity and Judaism. Us, this is us in the hand of the Jews, what Judah ought to do. So it means, you have to go back to religion to understand. Judah is still there. And what are the Jews responsible of? Wall Street, okay, money. Republicanism, because Lincoln was not a Democrat but Republican. And very important, democracy. Democracy is a Jewish ideology. And so you understand it has nothing to do with the Jew. And this is very good too. This is a white Russian propaganda. Hitler could have seen this. There were a kind of 200 postcards published by white Russian people being expelled, by the Bolsheviks. This man is a Jew, obviously. Look. Obviously. He's a Soviet Jew. And he's responsible of what? Because look, the price of tolerance, we emancipate them. And those people, we emancipate them, we were good for, and look how they give us, what they give us. Bolshevism, communism, socialist propaganda, finance, occultism, labor, sweet labor, cinema and press. Cinema, maybe it's true. Hollywood, pacifism. And you can say maybe also whatsoever. And it doesn't concern the Jew. This is modernity. But the fact it's good with anti-Semitism, you don't have to say, it's complex. You say it's a Jew. The Jew destroyed us. And this is around 1920. This is actually when maturation of Hitler. The same this. Look, Protocol of the Wives of Zion. This man is a German worker, and he wanted to get rid of what? Of the Jewish tycoon, capitalist, let's say Rothschild, and the Jewish social democrat. Whatsoever. You had so many within the Austrian and German. And of course, those two people who are connected, they say, no, we're not responsible of. You have to take of the good German, boss. The capitalism, not financial capitalism, but productive capitalism, etc. And this is the creation of the Christian Democrat Party. This postcard was initiated by Christian Democrat to try to say to the workers, don't enter the Socialist Party or the Communist Party because they are controlled by Jews. Socialism is a Jewish invention, and a very good example is, you can see it, the soziale Frage ist a Judenfrage. This is National Socialism. You don't need to fight against, your boss. We had to get rid of the Jews. And this is 1906, something like this. And this very famous sentence, Antisemitism is the socialism of the fool, of the idiot. I almost finished. Even in America, most of you are Americans, but there were hotels in America. This is 1944, May, and this hotel is forbidden to Jews. 1 month after, the American troop will, invade France. And it was forbidden to the Jews. The same, this one, strictly Gentile clientele. So it means the situation of the Jews were not so good. Even if in the propaganda in Europe then, people would say that Jews control America, that Roosevelt was a Jew called Rosenfeld, if you knew it is. There were even Jews who were, lynched. Not many. Most, 99% were, of course, African Americans. This is in Quebec. Jews are not wanted here in Saint-Agathe. So this was the situation. In certain places in Germany, This is a postcard. And it's it, here the Jews are not allowed. And it's before the First World War. And in this hotel, you know, it's a publicity, they say, you can come in my hotel, because it's a einziges judenfreies hotel. I assure you that you won't find any Jews in your hotel. Before the First World War. And the same, and this is funny, then people would say, people, Jews, you have to go to Palestine. Nach Palästina. Nach Palästina. Today is the country. Today you have to leave Palestine, but then you had to go to Palestine. And this is also, you know, the strength with anti-Semitism. The Jews has no place to be. Etc., etc. And this is the last, more or less, the stab in the back myth. The fact that, you know, the Jews were accused of being responsible of the defeat of the First World War. This is an Austrian postcard, and you can see the Austrian Republic, she looks like a Jew. Definitely. And it's absurd, because there were so many Jews, you know, who were active within the Austrian and the German army. My grandfather was in the Austrian army, and he was a patriot. Franz Josef was his god. And the same. And this is the Jew. And those are Jewish capitalists and Jewish revolutionaries. Again, you know. Anyway, those were responsible. And to go very fast, so this is how the new Germany was depicted. No more the beautiful eagle, but a kind of terrible bird. And just to say, I have no time, but let's see the radical anti-Semitism today. Anti-Zionism. And anti-Zionism is, but only the radical anti-Zionism, it's the same diseases. You know about David Dees, he's an American. And you can find him on the internet. And this man, of course, he doesn't use Jews anymore, he uses Zionists. It's so convenient to say Zionists. And he says, you know, the Zionists are responsible of the immigration within Europe and United States. He's very popular, this guy. And this explains Pittsburgh, because some people believe it's true. You know, the Jews, they bring the Muslim, etc., and the Latino within America, and use, you know, popular figures. This is Obama, Netanyahu. This is Syria, not Gaza. And you can see Obama and you can see Netanyahu. I think he has around 200 kind of things like this. Some are funny. This is also, you know, EU multiculturalism is white genocide. Muslims have 3 times the children as whites, etc., etc. The Zionist Jew agenda uses massive illegal immigration to US and EU to neutralize and destroy the white race. This is serious shit, if I may say so. And this is Macron, the same one. It is American. You see the Muslim population, the black people, Protocol of Zion. This is he is a Freemason connected to the Rothschild Bank. You can see. And this is radical anti-Zionism. The same pattern than anti-Semitism. Macron is a whore is a Jewish whore, putain juif, etc. This is the real Macron. And this is very funny, actually. You know, I'm your mother. You know, this is Macron. This is Attali, who used to be a Jew, who used to be the advisor of François Mitterrand, and he's, for the extreme right, the quintessence of Jewish capitalism and cosmopolitism. And she said, I am your mother. You understand? It means I'm your father. So he's his wife. And this is in a leftist. This is a leftist demonstration in Paris. This is Macron almost at NSS. Yeah, it's a leftist demonstration. And this is the Israeli flag. So it means that you can have conversion between extreme right and extreme left. And of course, and this is how when I say I use images and humor, I will send a lot of things to my students to show how absurd anti-Semitism is. This is Hollywood.org, crazy organization. This is Putin being a Jew. This is, you know, the one who said that Ukrainians, they are Jewish. This is, you remember this? This is so absurd. But anti-Semitism is totally absurd. Yes, and so and it's the same within the Arabic world. And it's, remember, modernity equal what? Judaism. And it's the same. Freedom and democracy milk, made in Denmark. And you can see the Jewish hands. It's the Jew who destroy, it means the traditional structure of Islamic society through democracy. Those responsible of, you know, you remember the cartoons against the Prophet? Those responsible are the Jews. Of course, there were no connection to this. And this is very funny, to show that Jews are always guilty. Egyptian TV debate. Sheikh claims there is a Jewish plot to decrease Egypt's population. Political sociologists claim the plot is to increase it. Anyway, you can't fail. You understand? And this is funny, in a sense. McDonald's, you know, is a Jewish Zionist. Drink Coca-Cola is to support Israel. Pepsi means pay every pence to save Israel. Pokemon is Jew, you know, because it's like a yellow star. It was forbidden in certain, and this is, okay, Gaddafi, you knew he was a Jew. And al-Baghdadi was a Moroccan Jew. His real name was Simon Elliot. Poor man. I don't know who this man is, but I don't think he lived long. And he's even, you know, his Mossad identity card. You know, Morsi was a Jew. Assad is a Hasid. This is El Ghanouch in Tunisia. The way how to attack your opponent always is to, how does it, denounce him as a Jew. This is another one. This is Al-Qaradawi. And again, Sisi, is Sisi a Jew? You can see. Egyptian journalist Emad, President Al-Sisi mother is Jewish. Well, great. And then you can see why, etc. This is thanks to memory that you can collect beautiful things to show. And then this is in French, you know, the French website, the mother of Al-Sisi. And it's extreme right website. The same here. He's a Hasid even, he's a Jewish from Poland. It's an Ashkenazi, Al-Sisi, if you can see. This is, of course, Atatürk. And very funny, you know, I think 15 years ago, some shark eat some German tourists, and the Minister of Tourism of Egypt said it was shark trained by the Mossad to kill German tourists. My God. So this is, you understand, it's a social paranoia. Doesn't concern the Jews at all. You know what Coca-Cola means? And the last one, and to show that it doesn't concern the Jews, it's funny. It means don't eat tomatoes. It transforms you into a Christian. Because it's social paranoia. It means if you have a tomatoes, you have a cross. So it means it makes you Christian. This was, voilà. Thank you. No question is good too, huh?
Questions, comments, or questions?
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Speaking of the information, I had a question about Poland and about Polish context.
Yeah.
In Polish Galicia, as well as in Ukrainian Galicia, there is a very popular figure, like a talisman or amulet, and it's a figure of typical stereotypical Jew with sidewalks and this stereotypical nose, and this small figure is holding a golden coin. And it's like an amulet which should be
I think it will be anti-Semitic stereotypes, because it will all only show the Jews in a traditional way, forgetting some Jews were more or less assimilated, integrated within the society, etc. And it's the same within, I would say, the Belgian press or the French press. Every time you want to represent the Jew, you will represent the Hasid. And this is not so typical. And also the fact that you connect the Jews with money. And it's, but in fact it's true that the Jews were useful to Poland till the 18th century because they were the middlemen. They were asked by the Polish king, well, to perform a certain function within the society. And you know that the first banknotes, the first coins, they were in Hebrew, etc., the first coins. And so in a sense, well, it tells us about the role of the Jews within traditional Poland, but it's, in a sense, absurd. Also, it's both, you know, it's quite peculiar, and also it's a good way to sell it to tourists. And some Jewish tourists, they buy it, and I don't understand why. But it's like this. But of course it's stereotypes. You have a lot of stereotypes. But you know, it's always ambiguous. Because as I said, Poland saved the Jews for centuries. Thanks to Poland, you know, Belgian Jewry were saved. And then after, you know, there were a lot of collaboration. And it explained also the destruction of the Polish Jewry. I'm sorry, yeah.
Joel, we have a lot of the scholars are thinking about their curricula.
Yeah.
And the students are beginning to think about what project, what implementation project they want to create in their context.
Yeah.
Going back to the university and stuff. I wonder if you can make a few suggestions or have any thoughts in terms of how your content, your presentation might be useful to, in very specific ways, to the professors and the students.
Well, I hope I did give you some, you know, some help to try how to teach, you know, this complex phenomenon in more or less an hour and a half, maybe, I don't know. You know, by using, I think it's very important, images, because you know what Confucius or maybe Napoleon said, one image worth 10,000 words, and it's true, you know, and if you can use, like, you know, Judah, etc., to explain, I think this is a good way too. I think to use images, and as many as possible, and then the rest is to be, and also, and I said, sense of humor.
Yes,
It means, for instance, to show the absurdity of anti-Semitism, the absurdity.
Sure, I'm just asking for your tools and your application of them. So how do you use them in particular with your students? Like, are they embedded in homework assignments? Are they embedded in projects? Are they parts of your lecture only?
No, of course it's seminars. What I do is, I will give them, you know, article to read, part of books, and it means I will give them books who actually with anti-Semitic speech, and I will distribute. And for instance, one book who said the Jews control America, another one who said the Jews control Soviet Union, another one the Jews control France, and then after they will all of them read their home and they will make a kind of summary and criticize, I will make them speech all together, and they will realize that, you know, they like this, this very famous joke. You know the joke when you have in Germany in 1938, you have two German Jews, both are reading a newspaper. It's a classical one, and the one is reading a normal paper, and it's terrible. Jews has problem in Germany, Jews has problem everywhere, and the other one is laughing. Why are you laughing? The news are terrible. And this man was reading the Stürmer. And he said, well, it's great news. Jews control America, Jews control Russia, Jews control England, Jews control France. You understand? So after they will read their paper, they realize the absurdity. Because when you believe that the Jews were controlling, and then Holocaust occurred, and nothing happened, you know, that America refused to have any refugees, almost only 10,000, I think, refugees came before the Holocaust. Palestine was closed. And you know that the Jews were powerless, that all those things, and this is the way. You have to teach maybe by the absurd. But it's not so easy, actually. It's not so easy, because I would say 20% of my students still have prejudices. Some of them believe what they read, and it's terrible. You know, they believe that the Jews control the world through Freemasonry, because you can still find this on the internet. but I think most of my students, more or less, they understand that it's quite a special phenomenon, etc. Yeah.
I was wondering if you think that anti-Semitism manifests itself in different European societies differently because of the type of Christianity that's predominant in the country. So, for example, it will manifest differently if it's a predominantly Protestant.
It's true. It depends what kind of Protestantism. If it's Lutheranism, it's going to be worse, I suppose. If it's Protestantism like the Dutch one, it means, les Protestants in Holland. No, not Lutheran. Allez, aux Pays-Bas. Je deviens... Anyway, if you will see within America, or even within England, you will see, of course, a different way. But still, Christianity is the origin of anti-Semitism. Still, it's still pregnant. It still functions today. And I will try to explain this afternoon how it still functions considering modern anti-Zionist propaganda. And its readaptation of those old myths, and especially, you know, the infanticide, ritual murder, the fact that our press, at least in Belgium or in France, and in England too, will stress about the fact that the Tzahal, the first act of Tzahal, is the Palestinian children. And this is, I would say, cultural. It has a Christian origin, and I will show it also through images that I collect. But still, there is a difference between the Protestant faith in the Protestant faith in Holland. I'm sorry, I'm tired. What? Calvinism. Thanks. Calvinism. The Calvinism will be more connected to they will have a different way of Judaism, for sure.
And why do you think that is?
Because, contrary to Luther, they read the Bible and they understand it, and in a sense they have a kind of identification, to the Jewish people, to Zionism, etc. It also explains why you will have more.
It's inherent to the fact that it is predominant in Dutch culture. So do you think that
Not Dutch culture. I would say this explains also the phenomenon of, I would say, pro-Zionism within America, for instance. It's the same. Or that there was at the origin people like Lord Balfour, they were kind of Protestant Zionism. No, they believed that, they were the Brits, they were the new Jews in a sense. They believed then that British means the Jewish, British, Britannia, etc. So they want kind of absurd thing, which explains also the Balfour Declaration. So there are differences, but I had to be very short. It was long, but I had to be short. I'm sorry about it.
Two things. First, the comment. As a psychiatrist, I like your metaphor of psychosis.
Thanks.
Versus
I was not wrong.
Yeah, I like that a lot. The second thing is, I think one of the things that is so surprising and interesting about what you say is that the Jews are hated for opposites, the communists and the financiers. These all doesn't make a difference according to either polarity. But to me, the most interesting polarity of what you said was that there are societies that allow Jews in and societies that keep them out. And the societies that keep them out hate them because they're different. So that you have the pogroms. Tell me if I'm understanding this right. But in Germany, they're let into the culture, and then if they succeed in the culture, they're hated for these. So they're hated if they don't assimilate and hated if they assimilate.
Exactly. No, what I try to... What do you mean? 5 minutes? I'm sorry. Okay, 5 minutes, good for me. So it's true. The paradox, and this is very important to stress to the students, contrary to the other one, it's when, I forgot to say it, it's when Jews succeed to be totally assimilated that you will find the worst period of, I would say, anti-Semitism. And I didn't speak about Alexandria, the Hellenistic period, when the Jews were so assimilated that they had to translate the Bible into Greek, the 70 translation of the Bible. They couldn't read Hebrew anymore. And this is where you had the first manifesto of harsh anti-Semitism too, or at least pogroms. And this is the origin of the war between the Roman Empire actually in Judea. It was a time of Philon of Alexandria, the first one, the inventor of theology. It was not a Christian, he was a Jew. And it was a period. And the same, when the Jews were extremely assimilated within the Muslim Spain, they couldn't, or the biggest philosopher was Maimonides. He wrote in Arabic. And this is when they were expelled, and he was expelled also. All the Jews were expelled from Spain. And then there was the period of Spain, Christian Spain, and they were also extremely assimilated. They speak Ladino, it means they speak Spanish, till the 20th century. And this man, and finally they were, this is the problem with the Jews. It means more assimilated they are, less you recognize, and more you become crazy. You believe they are everywhere and they conspire. The same with France. Dreyfus, was a kind of assimilated Jew. And the same with Germany. You couldn't find more Germans than the German Jews. They despised the Ostjuden, etc. And this is where they were only 1%. So this is a paradox. And this is quite, how would I say, I'm quite pessimistic, maybe about also the fate of the Jews in America in a sense. Although, I'm sure.
Further discussion.
We can have it on lunch. I'm sorry.
Okay. Your presentation was wonderful, and the image is incredible. I have two questions. You show a poster.
Yeah.
From the 20s. Relations, c'est ça?
Exactement.
You said the Jews were expelled from Portugal, but I think they were converted by force.
Yeah. They were converted by force. And this is why, they were still after, burning of Jews. The Portuguese historian told me we had no witches trial in our society because we can still burn Jews, like, Maranas. The new Christian, exactly. The fake new Christian.
Yes.
And it was also kind of paranoia, because most of them were...
They are not
Exactly. Yeah, it's true. I agree with you. I'm sorry, yeah.
Yes, Dr. Kotek, I want to follow up on your calibration of the onset or origin of anti-Semitism to the advent of Christianity and the misinterpretation of Christian texts. But what do you make of pre-Christian texts such as the Book of Esther?
It's a good question. Oh my God. You kill me, okay? You kill me. No, next time. It's a very good question. No, it's a very good question. There is something there. It's true. But it doesn't fit my... Ça va?